Great. Well, let me just go through the application process first, and then any broader questions. Excuse me, they rearranged my office while I was out of the country. Um, uh, then we can talk any broader questions that you may have about the certificate, the capstone requirement, and other things. So the application is fairly straightforward. It's live on the website now, went live December 1st. Applications are due February 1st, and we do make every effort to turn around acceptances so that you know before you have to register for fall classes. The basic parts, basic bio stuff that you've got. What we're looking for are kind of two things. Well, maybe three. One, as you know, you have to have received an A or an A minus in one of the foundation courses. That said, if you are in your foundation course in spring semester, when you would be applying, you obviously don't have a grade yet. You can go ahead and apply spring semester without completing that course. If your application is otherwise fine, then what we do is that we give you a provisional acceptance. And then when you get your grades, then we can move you up to full acceptance. So not having completed the foundation by the end of this semester does not mean you cannot apply. You can apply if you're taking the class in the spring, first thing. Second, the application will ask you about your illustrative electives. And we underscore that they're illustrative electives because we never know exactly what's going to be offered in the fall. Professors come, professors go, classes are added, classes are dropped. Also, the list of illustrative core electives is always a year old because we don't get the list of courses ahead of time. So that's just to kind of give you an idea. What I am looking for in the electives is a breadth of interest. Okay, the core of the certificate, as you've all heard me say, is to expand your comfort zone, to look at the regions, the countries, the issues, topics that impact or are impacted by what you would be doing within your own program, within your concentration, if it has it, or just how you have sort of concentrated your academic work. And examples that I have used, for example, there's a lot of Asian studies. People on this call, it would be very useful for somebody who has a concentration on China to get a feel for China and Africa. No question. But what is much more interesting to me is that you're taking the course on China in Africa from African studies, not from Asian studies, so that you understand how Africa sees China's role. I'm assuming that if you're a China specialist, you've already got the China view. I want you to get the Africa view. So it's the topic, but it's turning it around. SSP taking something in GHDP, someone in GHDP taking something in SSP. It's to get you to think about other ways of looking at issues and problems. I don't expect you to be going into classes where you know very much. And that's one of the great things about being at school. excuse me, if you just took courses that you already knew something about, you're not growing very much. So, excuse me, I was on an airplane for like 20 hours yesterday and I'm still dry. Um, so, what I want to see when I'm looking at your electives is, have you thought through what are the issues I need to understand to augment and expand and complement what I would be doing otherwise? And the reason for that is, first of all, I think it's more interesting education. But when you are in the policy world, however you define that, and it can be think tanks and NGOs, not just the government, um, you need to be able to look at an issue holistically. You may not need to know everything there is about how the military looks at an issue, but you need to understand that there's going to be a military component and you need to be conversant and aware. So this is not trying to make you an expert in all of these, we'll call them concentration adjacent topics. It's not to make a new specialty. It's to get you just aware and thinking about, how does this fit in with what I do? How does this fit in with how I look at things? And it's just, as I said, a way of just turning the issue, 5-10 degrees and getting a different perspective on it, and to sometimes test your assumptions. And as sort of an example of this, I had a student at a different university who took my course on the Arab Gulf states. He was a North Asia specialist. He could not have found the Arab Gulf states on a map before the first day of class, I swear. Um, and he did a paper on um, identity, narrative, and history, and also nationality and citizenship, and how they are not synonymous terms. And he took it from kind of a Korean perspective, which is what he had studied. Is what does, when you're Korean, you're sitting between China and Japan and everything else. Who are you? What is your nationality? What is your citizenship? Who are you? And he took that and he applied it to the Gulf states, where there are enormous expatriate communities who will never be citizens and never want to be citizens. But what are they? And so he took what he knew and then he plunked it onto an issue he knew nothing about. And he said, it really made me rethink how I was thinking about this in my, he went back to North Asia, if you want, but he went back with a slightly different appreciation of the issue that he had focused on. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do. So I'm looking at those electives. Have you thought this through? It's illustrative, not contractual, for all the reasons I mentioned. And then the next major part is a statement of interest. And there's a lot of, probably most of the weight is on that. How does the certificate add value to what you would do, what you would learn at SFS anyway? You're all in great programs, you'll get a good education regardless. How does the certificate add value to you and your academic pursuit? And how do you see it adding value to your career aspirations? And so you need to tell me why this is important to you. Why do I want to do this? What do I hope to get out of this? And that's basically what we look at. So I'm looking more at your thought process is what I'm really looking at. I want to know how you're thinking about this. And so that's basically the application. It's fairly straightforward. That's it. Questions that you may have. Ellie.
Yeah, just for the statement of purpose. So you're saying like with that latter bit about how you are curious what how it ties into what we'll be doing. If we don't know exactly what we want to go to, like say, for me, I know that I have a general idea of like the things that I'm interested in and how I want to be interacting with the policy world, but I don't know if that would be through the government or through contracting or things like that. What would you say in our application, kind of how
Well,
to illustrate that point?
I would say that you're being very honest. Most people don't really know exactly what they're going to do. They have a general idea of what issues they're interested in, uh, kind of what kind of impact they want to make. Are they on the NGO side where they, want to get out in the field and make something happen? Are they policy wonks? You know, um, kind of where you're looking at and how this would add to you. I fully expect that a first year grad student is not going to know exactly where they want to go yet. So, as I said, you would get points for honesty. This is kind of this is why I'm here at SFS. This is why I'm in this program. And this is why I think the certificate would be value added to the Ellie I'm trying to build to be able to do what my future Ellie will end up doing. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Other questions?
I saw in the requirements a mention of the capstone. Um,
Yes.
I was wondering if you could elaborate more on that. And I saw the application, so I just was curious about. There are some parts of the application that were unclear to me.
Well, the only thing that we have on the application regarding the capstone is a check the box that you understand that the capstone is a full requirement for the certificate. The only exception to that is if you apply for and are accepted as one of our student research fellows. We have 6 a year. Uh, that can count in lieu of the the capstone, but basically it's the capstone. Um, and The capstones are uh, always taught by ISD. All these other classes that you're looking at, you're wandering through the candy store that is SFS. Um, but the capstone is an ISD offered course, and depending on how many um, candidates we have, we gauge the number of capstones based on the number of candidates because the capstones are limited to 10 students. The capstone topics are different every year. And, you have this year we've got one on illiberal regimes in Latin America, one on the Arab Gulf states going forward, one on the evolving international disorder, um, and then one on the Indo-Pacific. Next year, it will be something different because they are taught by our senior state fellows. We get next year we may have a bumper crop of senior state fellows, but we get a number of senior state fellows. These are people who have been ambassadors, assistant secretaries, high in the policy making, who come here for a year or so. It's just time to refresh, maybe family issues, whatever. And so the capstone topics are always tied to whatever their expertise is. So if I have a Latin Americanist, I have a capstone on Latin America. No Latin Americanist, no capstone on Latin America. And so, but you will have the opportunity. You'll see all of the capstones that are available. I'll work with you if, to make sure you're in the one that fits your background and your aspirations the best. And then it is a very different class structure, because what you're trying to do is answer an intractable, ongoing diplomatic challenge. And I did have a student once who asked me why we picked only intractable issues, and the obvious answer is if it's tractable, somebody else would have fixed it. The first part of the class is kind of a standard graduate seminar, limited students, focused topic, a lot of reading to help you all get up to speed on the topic. You may be working on a region like this student who was in my class on the Gulf states, who was a North Asia specialist, helping everybody get a similar grounding. At the same time, you are responsible for writing an academically rigorous, policy relevant paper on an aspect of that overarching issue. And the course director works with you over the semester to help you frame your paper better, helps identify where you can look for better resources. We're not going to do the research for you, but we'll help you research it, help talk you through some of the analysis, and also help you on the writing. But it's yours, it's your project. And that's for about the first 2/3 of the class. The last part of the class is where the capstone is different than many other classes, in that the 10 of you then have to get together as a group, together, collaboratively, and write one strategy paper that reflects and weaves together your 10 papers, but not stapling them together. It's a weaving of themes and outcomes. And you have to kind of negotiate, what exactly is the issue? What is the narrative? How much history? What is the right history? What goes into the paper and what doesn't? And since your individual papers are supposed to have policy relevant recommendations, and obviously if there's 10 of you, all of those recommendations cannot go in the paper. One of my capstones sat down and they figured out that amongst the 10 of them, they had 82 recommendations. Well, that's obviously ridiculous. And so where do the recommendations reinforce each other? How would you sequence the recommendations? Where maybe the recommendations actually work at cross purposes? And you need to sort that out. And as much as we can do it in the course of a semester, this very much replicates what you will find when you're in the policy world. And that's whether you're in the government, a contractor, an NGO, a think tank, whatever, is unlike every paper you've done in your academic career, where you write your paper irrespective of what everyone else in the class is doing. It is evaluated, assessed, and graded on that. What everyone else in the class has done is irrelevant. And then you go on your merry way. On this one, because you have to work collaboratively, you have to read and understand where the other person is coming from. And this is what happens in the interagency process. I mean, if you're in the State Department, as I was, you come up with here's a problem, here's a solution. Then you have to shop it across the State Department bureaucracy. get buy-in, get feedback, make adjustments sometimes. Somebody might actually know more than you do. Then once you've got your own agency on board, then you have to shop it around the interagency. Oh, and then at a certain point, you have to go to other countries, whoever you're talking about, as well as allies and friends. And so we kind of do a cliff note version of that, where one of you may be looking at the issue from a security point of view, refugee point of view, environment point of view, whatever point of view. How do these weave together so that you can come up with something coherent? And that is very, very much what you do every single solitary day in the policy world, whatever element of the policy world you end up in. And so, and I've had students who have, they were a Pickering Wrangle and they went off and did their internship and they came back and said, yes, it's not exactly, she's right. This is what you do all the time. So this gives you the opportunity to really practice those skills of how do I collaborate? How do I negotiate amongst my peers? How do we sort out a team so that, we're not all duplicating each other, but we're getting towards the goal? And so I think it's a very important learning opportunity, and it's focused on a project. So it's not just doing a team building exercise, which are ghastly. And then now that you have this beautiful report that has so eloquently outlined the problem, identified the players, sorted out the interest, and come up with recommendations, now you get to present it to a panel of practitioners, senior practitioners who are working on the issue. And it's a little bit like a thesis defense. Although I have found in most cases, it's an engaged conversation with people who work on these issues all the time and really enjoy reading something from a bunch of Georgetown graduate students. Because another reality of the policy world in all of its aspects is that you spend so much time chasing the urgent that you sometimes don't get to the important. You don't have time to sit back and think. And what you all bring to the issue is the time to do the research, to think this through, to come up sometimes with some very interesting ideas, which they kind of go, we never actually thought about that. That's an interesting take on the issue, kind of a thing. So you're presenting it to a welcoming, friendly audience who will also, by the way, tell you when you're totally off base, which is also very useful to know. So that's the capstone. And that's kind of where we really, in theory, you have taken these different classes, concentration adjacent. So you've already started thinking this way, laterally about issues. And then we take you into the capstone and you do it very intensely. That's the capstone.
Thank you so much. That only got me more excited. So thank you.
Super. Excellent. Yeah, I'm always afraid I'm going to be turning people off, but if that sounds horrifying to you, it's better you know this now. You can, I don't know any student who has gone through the capstone process and not found it to be one of the hardest and the most satisfying thing that they did. It really felt like it was a capstone, not just for our certificate, but a capstone for what they've been doing for 2 years as graduate students. I have never, ever had a student say, the certificate and the capstone in particular was the biggest waste of time I ever did. I am so sorry I did this. I would have been better off, working another 4 hours at McDonald's. So I have a proof of concept that it's very good, and the students find it useful, interesting, challenging, and satisfying. Any other questions? Yes, Rory.
Thank you very much. Actually, this was the reason why I wanted to do it, was the explanation of the capstone. My question is more about the nuts and bolts of it. So we're talking a little bit about next fall classes and how that sort of factors into your vision and our vision for thinking holistically about diplomacy. Uh, so I know Maori and we have picked classes, and I'm open to changing my classes around next semester to make sure that it fits into this. Do you know if there will be an updated course list that may or may not make the cut? I went off the one from last semester, and of course, like you mentioned, some are a little bit different. But since they're all published, do you think that would be possible to see which ones would be applicable, or should I not worry so much about that?
Don't worry about that. Take a look at the old list. As I said, we don't get the list much before you do, so it's very hard for us to update it. As I said, it's illustrative, and so and probably most importantly, if there is a course that you do see that you are interested in, that you think fits the criteria of the certificate, and it wasn't offered last time, so it's not listed, all you have to do is just send me an email that says, this is what I want to take. It doesn't show up. This is why it fits the certificate and why it is good for me. And unless it is truly off the wall, I will approve it. And if it's kind of only sort of off the wall, I will probably go back to you and say, I get the wall, but you're not on it quite. So let's talk about what are you trying to do with this course? And, is there another way to get at the same experience, but maybe something different? So I will either say yes, or I will say, let's talk, as opposed to no. Any other questions? Okay. For you all and anyone who watches this later, any questions you have about your classes for spring, if you're still trying to figure out what might work best, any classes for spring, or as we get closer into spring and you're thinking about fall, just reach out to me. I work very hard at being accessible. I'm not always, sometimes something's going on. Generally, if I get an email, I will respond within 24 hours. If you send me an email and you don't get an out of office, and you don't hear back from me, just send it again. So, I am here to help advise and to help you. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to me. And any of my academic coordinator colleagues, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me too. So it's not just the students.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because every student has a slightly different program, a slightly different set of issues, a different set of other commitments. And one thing about this certificate is it's very bespoke. Each of you brings different interests and background to the issues. You're in different programs and you've got a different personal concentration beyond any formal concentration. And so therefore, what would be most useful to you is going to be different. And that's one of the reasons, Rory, that we don't have a very short list of courses, because even another student in your program is probably going to benefit from a different collection of courses. Some overlap, but it will be different. So this is not a cookie cutter, here are the 3 boxes you need to check and you're fine. It really is what bespoke for you works best for you. Anything else? Okay, you know where to find me. I'm going to be grading finals all next week, so any effort to interrupt me will be absolutely welcome beyond description. You write 4 papers, I read 15, so you know it's please. And so I look forward to being able to work with you all and answer any individual questions, or those of your friends who may also be interested and weren't able to join us. Okay, good. I will see you all later. Bye-bye. Thank you.
So much.